Azeri President Haydar Aliyev was initially reluctant to commit to one of them, for fear a better deal could be struck with another. But in 1994, he opted for what became known as the Contract of the Century, a production sharing agreement with a consortium of 11 companies led by BP.
There's a number of Western companies, French, Italian, British, American companies involved in it, some of the biggest oil companies in the world. They've been working for many, many years. When oil prices were very low in the late 1990s, it was perhaps very difficult to justify economically the construction of the pipeline and the field development.
The production sharing agreement was the result of more than 10 years of painstaking negotiations and calculations on the part of the Azeri government and the oil companies contracted to build the pipeline. The contract stated that these oil companies would join the Azeri government in investing billions of dollars in the development and transport of oil deposits from the Caspian. In return, they would be given a share of the revenues. Oil estimates during Soviet times were often inflated for political purposes, and questions still remain. How much oil is there in the Caspian Sea?
That's a highly disputed and controversial issue. Several years ago, the American Central Intelligence Agency came out with their own forecasts of how much oil was in the Caspian. That was probably a political forecast as much as anything else to ensure that there was support in the West for developments in Azerbaijan. There certainly is about 5 million barrels of oil in the fields that the Western Consortium, BP, led by BP, is developing now.
Corruption is endemic in the region, and there is a legitimate concern that the new money coming from oil sales will only increase opportunities for unscrupulous officials to enrich themselves.
Oil can be a curse as well as a benefit, because oil comes to dominate an economy like Azerbaijan's, and how they use those oil revenues is a big issue. If you look around the world, many countries which have received huge windfalls from oil production, it actually hasn't helped those countries at all. If you look at Nigeria, Colombia, Indonesia, and so forth, much of the oil revenues were simply siphoned off into the hands and the pockets of a very small number of people, led to lots of corruption, lots of bribery. Azerbaijan is working with international institutions and with Western governments, and the hope is that they will use the money properly for the benefit of the Azeri people. But it will be the main revenue for Azerbaijan for many, many years to come.
The potential benefits to the West of having access to Azeri oil are considerable, not least because it could decrease dependence on the volatile Middle East. Although no one believes that Azeri oil in the Caspian Sea will amount to as much as 5% of what is available in Iraq, it seems clear that instability in that country will hinder distribution long after the BTC pipeline has reached its peak.
It's true, there is a lot of oil in the Middle East, there's a lot of oil in Russia, and there's a lot of oil in Latin America and elsewhere. But in terms of security of supply and diversity of supply, Caspian oil becomes very important because it's a new source of supply. From a Western point of view, from Washington's point of view, or from London's point of view, or Brussels' point of view, the importance of Caspian oil is it is a new source of oil. It gives the world a greater diversity of supply, and that equals greater security of supply over the long term.
Hey, this one here is not wide enough. You can't double stack them until they go in. That's...
Predictions by senior U.S. officials that the removal of Saddam Hussein would quickly lead to Iraq's exporting 3 million barrels of oil a day have proved grossly optimistic. Sabotage and violence have limited exports to less than half that amount. The stakes involved in finding an accessible route are high, for Azerbaijan, for Central Asia, and for the West. But the simple question, where do you build a pipeline in such a fractured region, did not have a simple answer.
One of the problems with oil is that much of it, they talk about God's little joke about where he put all this stuff. It's in countries which are inherently unstable.
An obvious oil export option would have involved using Iran's existing pipeline to the Persian Gulf to transport Azeri oil to the world market. Not only was this the shortest and most direct route, but Azerbaijan and Iran are historically linked. As a result of an 1828 treaty between Iran and Russia, the southern portion of what was once Azerbaijan is now part of Iran. Indeed, there are more Azeris living in Iran today than there are in Azerbaijan. But as much as the route made sense geographically and culturally, it was politically impossible. In 1995, Bill Clinton signed an executive order forbidding U.S. companies from doing any business with Iran. A year later, the U.S., Iran, and Libya Sanctions Act was passed. This act stated that the U.S. government would impose sanctions on any foreign companies making large investments in the Iranian oil sector. This was a price few multinational companies were willing to pay.
And the Iranians have offered a fairly attractive package, either taking oil, using it in their refineries in northern Iran, which is the industrialized part of the country, and then giving an equal amount of oil available to the Western companies at their main export facilities in the Persian Gulf, like Karg Island. But the United States government has just been emphatic that it does not want to see Western investors invest in Iran generally, and certainly not take Caspian oil via Iran.
A second export option involved sending oil to Turkey through Iran, but this was politically impossible for the same reason. A third possible pipeline route would have been to transport the oil to Turkey through Armenia, but for very different reasons, this was also a political impossibility.
People talked a few years ago about peace pipelines, a pipeline that would go from Baku via Yerevan and then on to Turkey. Obviously, the situation in Nagorno-Karabakh, the two countries are still technically in a state of war. So you would have to have a peace agreement first before any kind of consideration of a pipeline via Armenia from Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan and Armenia are still embroiled in a war which seeds were planted decades ago.
Buraya sen gel. Kanı kolakla, kolu.
When Moscow drew up Azerbaijan's boundaries in the 1920s and 30s, many Armenians were left behind in Azerbaijan, particularly in the enclave of Nagorno-Karabakh. This region, which is about the size of Delaware, is home to 160,000 people, 95% of whom are ethnic Armenians. The dispute over Nagorno-Karabakh was the source of much tension between the two countries, particularly in 1991, when the Nagorno-Armenians demanded their independence or their incorporation into Armenia. Their demand triggered a full-scale war, during which Azerbaijan cut off oil supplies to Armenia. By the time a ceasefire went into effect in 1994, the fighting had claimed hundreds of lives and displaced 1 million people. Armenian soldiers remained on 1/5 of Azeri land. Talks since have failed to resolve the impasse, and many more people have died.
The other problem is Armenia is a very, very heavily mountainous country. It's not the easiest part of the world to build a pipeline, so Armenia would simply physically be a very difficult country to build a pipeline.
The anticipated increase in Azeri wealth also poses a potential threat to the region if the Azeri government recognizes the oil revenue as an opportunity to end its ongoing war with Armenia. With so much extra money available, it might invest heavily in its military, perhaps starting an arms race in the region that Armenia and the other republics would be even less able to afford.
It's clear that Azerbaijan in the next 10, 15 years will earn significant amounts of money, billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of revenues. Now, if that is turned into buying military equipment and hardware, then that could be very difficult, and the pipeline in that sense could spark a conflict, a renewal of a conflict.
With no functioning political relationship with Azerbaijan, no participation in the pipeline, and no pipeline revenues, Armenia is left out of the regional oil windfall about to be exploited in Azerbaijan. In fact, since its war with Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh, Armenia has been forced to get petroleum elsewhere, including the Georgian port city of Batumi on the Black Sea. In 1994, during a severe energy shortage, the Armenian government mobilized truck convoys, using anything that could haul the precious cargo back to the landlocked nation.